Welcome. We're here to give you a strategic briefing on Vietnam's innovation economy, pulling directly from our latest biweekly snapshot report. We're going to zero in on the signals that matter most.
If you look at Vietnam today, you're seeing a country in the middle of a massive, really ambitious transformation. It's moving at lightning speed, shifting from being just a manufacturing powerhouse to becoming a real leader in technology for the whole region.
So that really brings us to the big question, right? With all this change happening, what are the key signals, the things that decision makers really need to be watching? Well, we've broken it down into 3 interconnected themes that, when you put them together, paint a really clear picture of where Vietnam is headed.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. We'll start with capital and innovation. Then, we'll get into the high-tech backbone being built. After that, we'll cover the future-ready frameworks making it all possible. And we'll wrap up with the key takeaways. All right, let's jump right in with our first theme, capital and innovation. This is really the fuel for growth. And what we're seeing is some serious investment flowing into those high-potential sectors, especially, and this is a big one, artificial intelligence.
So, let's put a number on that confidence. $4 million. That's the figure from the most recent funding round for a Vietnamese AI startup called 𝐁𝐈-𝐖𝐄𝐄𝐏. That's a huge vote of confidence from international investors in the local tech scene.
And this isn't just funding for a simple app. This capital is going to accelerate some seriously sophisticated technology. We're talking about really advanced stuff, like AI-powered noise cancellation, voice biometrics for security, even super specialized compliance tools for the insurance industry. Honestly, 𝐁𝐈-𝐖𝐄𝐏's whole product suite is proof of just how deep the local AI talent pool has become.
Okay, so that's the capital side. But innovation doesn't just happen on its own, right? It needs a solid foundation. And that brings us to our second section, building out the high-tech backbone. Vietnam is making these massive investments in both the digital and the physical infrastructure it needs for this next big leap.
And what's really interesting here is this two-pronged approach. On one hand, you've got FPT with this huge vision for a Vietnamese Silicon Valley, a massive hub just for software, AI, and big data. But then on the other hand, you have Vietnam getting into the hardware game with the country's first ever semiconductor fab. That's a factory for making computer chips. So you see, it's a really strategic push for leadership in both software and hardware independence.
And of course, when you make moves like that, the world starts to notice. Global giants are paying attention. ASML, and if you know semiconductors, you know they're a massive player, is now actively looking at expanding its supply chain and R&D right there in Vietnam. That's a huge signal that Vietnam is becoming a truly critical link in the global high-tech supply chain.
Now, this infrastructure story isn't just about data centers and chip fabs. It's also about what's happening on the streets. I'm talking about electric mobility. The EV market in Vietnam is absolutely exploding, but it's hitting one major speed bump. You have this huge gap between massive consumer demand and the infrastructure that's actually ready to support it. I mean, look at this. Almost 80% of people are keen to buy an EV, but the readiness score is, well, pretty low.
So, what's the solution? Well, the government is moving fast and smart. Ho Chi Minh City has just given the green light to install 20,000 of these sidewalk battery swap cabinets. That's a super practical solution that tackles the urban charging problem head-on.
And it's not just the government. The private sector is jumping in too. While the city is building out public infrastructure, you have industry leaders like Honda, who, let's be real, own about 80% of the two-wheeler market, building out their own charging networks at their dealerships. It's this powerful one-two punch of public policy and private investment that's really closing that infrastructure gap fast.
Okay, so you've got the capital, you've got the infrastructure, but none of this happens in a vacuum. It needs rules, it needs structure. And that brings us perfectly to our third theme, the future-ready frameworks. We're talking about the sophisticated policy and financial systems that you absolutely need to attract global money and make sure all this growth is sustainable.
And a perfect example of this is the new International Financial Center in Ho Chi Minh City. By setting up a governing body that plays by international rules, Vietnam is essentially building trust. It's sending a clear message to global investors. Your money is safe here, and we know how to manage it.
Another really crucial piece of the puzzle is the new domestic carbon market. Now, this might look complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. By giving clear jobs to key players like the Hanoi Stock Exchange and the Securities Depository, Vietnam is building the clear, transparent financial plumbing needed to support a modern, green economy. This is how you actually get to those net zero goals.
All right, so let's pull all these threads together for the big picture. And the key takeaway here is that none of these are just random, isolated events.
They're all part of a single, deeply interconnected national strategy.
You can really see a clear three-step logic at play. First, you attract the capital into cutting-edge tech, like AI. Second, you use that momentum to build out the foundational infrastructure, both physical and digital. And third, you underpin all of it with strong, reliable policies and financial frameworks. You see how each pillar just reinforces the others? It creates this incredibly powerful cycle of growth.
And that leaves us with one final, forward-looking question. The money is flowing in, the infrastructure is being laid, the policies are getting locked in, all the foundational pillars are there. So the real question now, for anyone watching, investors, partners, policymakers, is this: what is the next frontier for Vietnam's innovation economy?